I think like one of the reasons why I play so many roguelike games, or find the draw to play them so strong, is that like they just suit my life, my schedule really, really well. I can pick them up. I can play a little or a lot, or get balls deep, and then we'll just like skim the surface. It's possibly why like I didn't have a massively long lasting impression of Mario and Luigi, because I was maybe just in a rush to get it over with. That's it's not the case, because I put 100 hours into Xenoblade Chronicles 3, and it's one of the greatest games I've ever played.
Wowzers! I don't know where you find the time.
I don't
know where you find the time.
I'm self-employed, and my boss is very lenient. Like when I was younger and had more free time, so like substantial blocks of time, this is exactly the sort of stuff I'd want to be playing. But it's but it's actually taken me 3 years, I think, to finally get around to playing Xenoblade Chronicles 3, because of just how imposing the sheer size of the game is, and also knowing that it wouldn't be a game that I could slowly chip away at whilst watching Love Island on the sofa of an evening. This was a game I wanted to be fully immersed in, sound cranked up, playing it on the TV if I could, because it's all just so dense and delicious. And I was also fearful that Xenoblade 3 wouldn't live up to Xenoblade 1 and 2, although I had the same reluctance in starting Xenoblade 2 because of my insistence that it couldn't possibly be better than 1. I thought, these are all new characters. If I haven't got Shulk, it can't be as good. But
if it's not Rhine time,
it's not Rhine time. It's not my time. But lo and behold, they raised their game phenomenally. So, in fact, I distinctly remember the first there's a cutscene like fairly early on in the game, and there's a piece of music on the soundtrack called Counterattack, and that kicked in, and I knew this was just going to be absolutely incredible. Like, honestly, if you haven't heard the track Counterattack from the Xenoblade Chronicles 2 soundtrack, stop what you're doing right now, go and listen to it, because I guarantee you, your life will be better on the other side of it. It is that good.
So I hang up now, and then we'll do this in a minute.
I would love for you to sit there and listen to it now.
In real time.
Honestly.
Like,
do you want to do it?
No.
Okay. No. But listen to it. I'll send you a link to it later.
Okay.
It has no right. It has no right. But something that's brilliant about these games, to help that sense of, not wanting to move on from a set of characters or a story, or worrying that the third part of the trilogy might disappoint, is that like every Xenoblade Chronicles game is pretty much its own standalone story, not even touching the stories of the other games. They're all taking place in this same world, but all 3 games come from very different perspectives, and the overarching story, whilst incredible and brilliant and mind-blowing, is almost there as a bonus, because the core stories in these games, like the human stories and relationships, that's what make these games compelling. And it's brilliant that they've decided not to risk, damaging the legacy of the other games by continuing the story of characters whose story had come to a natural conclusion.
Yeah.
I honestly think you could play any of the 3 Xenoblade Chronicles games in isolation from the others without any problem. Obviously, there are overlaps and overarching lore here, but these are very different sets of characters set in very different eras of this world, and all 3 games have very different tones as well, which has just been like amazing to see sort of unfold and evolve across the series. Like Xenoblade Chronicles 1 was very much like a cool sci-fi action movie set in a world that was actually the remains of 2 extraordinary titans frozen in time mid-battle. Leaving how on earth could that possibly be expanded on? And then Xenoblade Chronicles 2 raised the stakes, broadened the vision to be set on a range of titans that were alive and moving around, and then you get to put a cute baby titan on your back and carry him around. And this whole game is then just this much more of a sweeping, swashbuckling space opera. And by that sort of thinking, Xenoblade Chronicles 3 feels like a dystopian war epic. It is. Yeah, the world in Xenoblade 3 feels sparse and barren and war-torn. There are no glorious cities and charming communities. Instead, all the settlements in the game are colonies from 2 warring factions of Keves and Agnus. And these colonies are all centered around a giant hulking Pharaonis it's called, a machine that acts as like a central hub for the colony when it's stationed, and then everything can pack up into it, and it can just tear its way across the landscape to another location should it need to. And like, I was initially a bit concerned by this setup because of just how bleak it all felt, but the game then uses this backdrop to paint a really compelling, deeply moving narrative with this fantastic premise built into this world at war. Like, all of these soldiers that are fighting in these colonies, they're all these artificially created soldiers, and they're created to be born at, like, I couldn't quite work out what it was, but it feels like they're born at about 12 years old, and then they have a 10-year lifespan of just repetitive like training and then fighting under the threat of each colony's flame clock that needs to be filled by continually harvesting lives, or else it will run out and the soldiers will die. It's just so horribly bleak. Obviously, the story takes shows you the story of what happens when somebody comes along and tries to break all of this down and free all these people. But the whole thing is just, it is bleak, but it's a great commentary on the futility of war and conflict, and how so many people feel they are born into a certain way of life and don't question it. And if there's, if there is even another choice to take, questioning those in authority and what their motives are, whether we have value or we're just serving as pawns in a system. It's a lot to think about. And as it did with the first two games, it uses then the science fiction genre trapping so brilliantly to create these existential dilemmas that you can't explore if you don't have 100 hours of batshit foundation to launch the philosophy from. I'm not going to spoil any of the ins and outs of the story. I'm not even going to talk about the characters, because going along for the ride, learning all of these characters' stories and backstories and twists and turns is what makes so many RPGs just incredibly enjoyable, especially when it's brought to life so amazingly by this voice cast, delivering every ridiculous line of dialogue with such tenacity, honesty, and earnestness. You cannot help but believe in them. And like, I mean, this sort of like the over-the-top writing and dialogue that was definitely present in one has been reined in since the first game, which is probably for the best, but it's still got, a great big dollop of melodrama to it. And I love all of that over-the-top dialogue. I mean, I love anything in life that just sort of just enjoys itself 100% unashamedly. Just love the things you love, man. And it doesn't matter that like you hear some of the same expressions in the game a billion times, because they trigger every time you win a battle or find a valuable item. Like, my favorite is the delightfully vague, "Oh, I found a rare doodah," which reminds me of like a piece of commentary in FIFA 2004 or something like that just said, "Oh, certain defenders are pushing certain forwards." But if I was the voice actor for that line in Xenoblade, I would say it in real life as often as humanly possible, just to see if it got a reaction. Just ordering a piece of cake. Can I have a slice of that vanilla doodah, please? Also, like, the names in the game are great fun. Like, not so much the character names, they're fine, but like item names and the names of special enemies that will be lurking around the map, which sort of serve as optional mini bosses. To name these mini bosses, there's about 150 of them, like, across the whole world. It's like someone just did a lucky dip on an adjective and then picked a name at random from like the A to Z of baby names. It's not quite as ridiculous as they used to be. Like, I don't know, like Lethargic Gerald or Suspicious Kevin, or
I forgot all these names from Xenoblade 1.
Obsequious Bill. But they're a bit more epic now. Like, you do get occasionally like Titan McWalloper or something like that, but like you still have like Rowdy Carlos or Sycophantic Lilith, and it's ridiculous and always fun. But they always have fun with like just the names of items as well. Like, you're picking up hundreds of things that you don't really need to know what they do or what they are, but it'll pop up and it was just be like, that's a ridiculous thing, like a whisper sausage or something. And in my life, I always like to play a game with Sammy, my wife, where I'll say, if you had to change your name to A or B, what would it be? And then give her two utterly horrible choices.
Yeah.
But now I've just been doing it, just picking names of items from Xenoblade 3. Like, if you had to change your name to Misty Asparagus or Empress Lettuce, what would it be? Or if you had to be Rick Fossil, what would you do? Yeah,
with Georgia, I don't give her options. I just say, would you like it if your name was? And then I'll say like Colin Stilson, and it will be related to nothing. And then she'll just turn to me and say, I don't know. Like, not really. It's like, all right then, fair enough. Move on.
But the choices I give Sammy is either basically it comes down to, would you rather destroy your personal life or your professional life?
Yeah,
because you have to make that choice now.
Both funny in different ways.
yeah, not for you, and in reality, it would definitely not be for me either.
Yeah.
But let's imagine that it was
Massive walloper.
Titanic wallop. I can't talk about the Xenoblade games without also mentioning the quality of the music. It is absolute top tier, god class RPG music. The sheer amount of it in the games is staggering when you see like how many themes there are, how many variations the themes have as well, and just how staggeringly well and densely orchestrated they are. So many bangers, so many deeply beautiful and emotional moments. And honestly, when Nintendo get round to adding the soundtracks of these games on the Nintendo Music app, I might just not listen to anything else for a solid year, and I don't think I'd get bored. Playing the Xenoblade games can be a bit overwhelming because of how dense the systems are in the game. There are a lot of systems, and they continue to be iterated upon and stacked on top of other systems and mechanics and mechanics and mechanics as you get further and further into the game. There's so many classes to choose from, so many heroes to unlock, and different ways of fusing different classes together to create the perfect team build. And like, I honestly didn't come close to understanding most of it, but it never impacted my enjoyment of the game because like the broad strokes of the game, certainly the combat, pretty readable. And then you'll pick some of this stuff up along the way to like add in how you tackle the battles, and like by the end, like I was pulling off, combos and chain attacks and super arts and all kinds of things that would like rely on like queuing up like a correct sequence of about 30 different things.
Yeah.
And like if you showed that to me when I started the game, I'd be like, well, that's wizardry. But now I'm just like, yeah, but I haven't even scratched the surface. But like, the game gives you the chance to customize how much you enter into all of this. So like when you're sort of like building your characters and equipping them with various things and skills and equipment, you can just auto build, and the game will just recommend a set of powers and equipment. You can turn the difficulty up and down at any point. You can turn on auto battling for like most of the battles in the game. You still have to take manual control for like boss battles and like the unique enemy battles, but because like you're always got a party of like 6 or 7 people, you're only ever controlling one at a time. If you just stood there and did nothing with the game sat on easy, you'd probably be all right. But like if you want to get balls deep in the systems and really give yourself a challenge, then you can change the difficulty up. But manually go through all the menus and the menus to have everything optimized within an inch of its life and feel like a total champ. Like I found myself sometimes whacking on auto battling when I was doing side quests or tracking through an area with lots of unavoidable fights with lower leveled enemies if I wasn't quite feeling the need to manually fight a bunch of rabbits or something. But it's nice that it puts that in your hands. Like if you've looked at a Xenoblade game and thought, I cannot possibly understand what's going on there, you're right. But good news, you don't need to have a really, really great time. Like I think I wrapped the main story in just over 90 hours, rolled the credits. I dove straight back in to mop up a few things that I'd left undone. I don't think I'll ever come close to properly 100%ing it, but like I did a lot of the side quests. I built up my affinities very high with a lot of characters and a lot of colonies. I fought like a lot of the unique monsters, including the
Walloping Bill.
I defeated the set of like, I think there's like 5 super bosses and then a final super one. I did them. I didn't like feel the compulsion that I used to feel to do absolutely everything. I mean, I was gutted when I came to the end of the story because I wanted more, but I was also happy to call time on it when it felt like I'd done enough in the game for me to go, yeah, I've absolutely played that game, But also part of the reason was that I've got the standalone DLC for Xenoblade 3 called Future Redeemed, which is its own 30-plus hour RPG.
It's mad.
And properly pulls all the strands from Xenoblade 1, 2, and 3 together for like the first time to properly, like, apparently it's just like the most amazing like climax and finale for the trilogy, and I cannot wait. I cannot wait to keep playing it. Oh, honestly, I think, like, I mean, well, I haven't played Xenoblade Chronicles X, which I know apparently it's entirely apparently entirely unconnected to the main trilogy. Whether or not we'll have some like additional content coming in the definitive edition to weave it in a little bit, I don't know. They might be laying the groundwork for Xenoblade Chronicles 4 or Xenoblade Chronicles X 2. They did that with Final Fantasy, didn't they?
That's not 22, it'll be 12, so it's a bad joke. They did, yeah. X2 was the Final Fantasy one.
But I can safely say, hand on heart, that this should be considered among the very best RPG series, right alongside Final Fantasy, Dragon Quest, Fire Emblem, any of these. Xenoblade Chronicles are your equal. I declare it